Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
In episode 72, Rosemary Gattuso explores unresolved parental conflict as a potential risk factor for children.
Hello and welcome to Healing Through Love podcast. I'm your host, Sharlene Lynch from sharlenelynch.com. Healing Through Love is here to help victims and survivors of family and domestic violence find their way back to living a more fulfilling and meaningful life. We interview experts and survivors who share their personal stories and offer advice to those who've experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their healing journey. As well as Healing Through Love podcast, we also hold annual Pamper Days here in South Australia for survivors of domestic and family violence, where local businesses come together and pay it forward to provide their services and resources to give a much needed day of indulgence. Think day spa on steroids. I'm so excited to say that Healing Through Love Pamper Days have now gone global, and we're running a training program to teach many countries. We've got Canada, we've got parts of the USA, we've got Hong Kong, and several others, in fact, that we're actually helping them bring Pamper Days to their local community so that we can shift awareness in and around family and domestic violence and create these much needed Pamper Days. If that sounds like something you want to get involved in, reach out to us. We'd love to have a conversation with you, or at least connect you to a company that's running one of these in your local area. Every week we have amazing guests, and this week is no different. We have Rosemary Gattuso. I'm probably got that wrong, but she's going to correct me, I'm sure. She is a former law student and mediator and therapist who leverages her knack for overthinking into a valuable asset. Her journey from legal studies to family court mediation, along with postgraduate studies and a brief stint at Harvard, have culminated in a dream job that allows her to explore personal crises, resilience, and the human mind through the strengths-based lens. She's written a book, It's Not You, It's Me, and we're going to dive into that. Hello, Rosemary. How are you?
Hey, good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's so great to have you in our proximity. Right, so obviously there's a personal story behind all this, a personal story that you have you divulged the personal story inside the book?
Well, I do in certain stages, but it's really about, it's more like a workbook actually, and it's really based on my observations on how people manage adversity and the trends that could sort of predict outcomes, whether or not a particular individual is going to overcome and succeed or will be overcome by their obstacles and maybe take a little bit longer. So there's parts of me in that, there's parts of my work and my studies. It's all in one.
Oh, so what would you say are the key indicators that would allow us to determine if someone's going to have these breakthroughs at the end of this trauma or a breakdown?
Well, I guess there's a lot to it. So the first thing I should note is that I noticed that all thoughts, feelings, and actions in relation to any event, situation, or scenario can be categorized into two options and come under these umbrellas. One will be what's wrong, and the other will be what's strong. So whether or not we have a tendency to use the what's wrong lens or the what's strong lens could help predict how quickly that adversity is going to be overcome and managed. The proviso is there that when you experience a personal challenge or adversity or abuse, it tends to highlight what's wrong. And when we're on the path of what's wrong, as we walk down that path, we get more evidence to support that narrative. So it's quite hard to actually make the flip when you're in the middle of it.
Yes, absolutely true, that we have these limiting beliefs, these stories that we tell ourselves, and then life becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because I don't know, if you look at it from an energetic perspective, we're almost making that happen, which is a challenge when I know, as a survivor myself, and I have conversations with other survivors, for us to think, how is it possible that I've created this outcome? You telling me the way that I thought about it, or the way that I think is continuing this challenge. So yes, it's a very touchy subject, and it requires a great deal of empathy and sympathy and compassion to help people through the process. So how long did it take you to write the book?
Well, it's actually been a couple of years in the making. So I really started it and got it one version finished in 2018 as part of a writers' competition that I entered. And that was sort of the motivation, because, I'd been saying I want to write a book for a long time, and I just never finished it. So that gave me a deadline. And that was it was actually a fiction. And then the last chapter was a self-help chapter that really analysed the main character's challenges and how she managed her own adversity. And it wasn't long before I worked out that I couldn't really propose a book like that, fiction and non-fiction. I had to really choose. And so I chose non-fiction. And it's really a compilation of my observations in the mediation room, because I guess I noticed that there might be one situation where very similar facts, I guess, or similar situations in one room as in another room, but very different outcomes. And it was quite obvious what the differences were in that what's wrong focus or what's strong focus. And I guess the reality is that when you are in the middle of this crisis, abuse, whatever you want to label it, it's really hard to get out of that what's wrong lens, especially if that's been the default, because biologically we're primed to look at what's wrong. Our survival historically depended on it. We have negative bias where we remember the worst part of a scenario over the good parts. So I guess what I say is that where there has been significant trauma, and when I talk about trauma, I don't mean an event or a series of events or whatever. It's more about the impact on the individual, because it doesn't have to come under the umbrella of being what you or I would kind of, or society and the legislation and the way that the organizations are set up, the way that they define trauma and abuse. It doesn't have to fit into that category. It's really about the impact on the individual. So when there has been a big impact, then maybe looking at going down the what's strong path, or reflecting, because it's not about actually going down that path all the time, but also that awareness of, hey, I was going down what's wrong and I want a different outcome now. It hasn't served me. I'm going to next time, go down what's wrong, or just be aware of it. So, but when you have had that significant event that's had this impact on your sense of self, it's a lot harder to then go to the strong path. And I kind of say it's almost like taking 2 steps forward, 10 steps back.
So true, so true. And so as this expert authority in and around mediation, many of our listeners today will be having a challenge with that if they're not already in that process. Can you give us any tips, techniques that we can use when we're in this process of mediation?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I say is that preparation is key, because it is a really emotional session, and it might be for many the first time that they've been in the same room or the same building as the other parent or their ex-spouse. So that in itself is massive. And as a mediator, my role is to really manage that and witness it in a respectful way as well. So the more prepared you are, then I guess the easier it is to manage with that emotion and the heaviness, and just feeling really exhausted after having a 2 or 3 hour conversation. So I think preparation is key, and also be open about your limitations, because the mediator wants to know. It's a mediator's job to really manage it, to say, okay, let's take a break, or let's go in separate rooms, or let's do it virtual, or let's have a short session first just to get through Christmas and then come back in the new year. But I always say to my clients, please, maybe it might not be that obvious to me. If I see something and think, okay, I need to make adjustments, then I will. But if it's not obvious, please don't be afraid to say, this isn't working, or can we do something different?
We have a safe word, so, is that something that you...
Well, I guess on one hand, yes, you could, but if it was a situation where there needed to be a safe word, I would probably make it in 2 separate rooms or put something else in place so that it doesn't have to, because it's about, I do primarily where there are children involved. So it's about arrangements for the children. So anything that can support the parents is going to support the children. So I don't want to put parents in a situation where they feel under extra pressure. And then how can you you're negotiating around the probably the most important asset, if you want to call children. I'll go away from calling children assets, but it's, the most important, aspects of life, dealing with your children. So anything that can really alleviate some of that stress that can come up can just make the process smoother.
Excellent. So being prepared emotionally for the trauma that you're about to, because as you say, first time that you might be in the same building as the perpetrator or your partner, ex-partner, if that case may be. So aside from being prepared, what's another tip? Is it about knowing what outcome you're looking to? I know you said to be open, but is it being firm on the outcome that I'm looking for, or are you saying being open on the outcome I'm looking for?
Well, I guess then in that's where having legal advice is also really helpful. And I know that mediation is about avoiding going to court, but it can be really helpful and add an added layer of support if you know your legal stance, your legal position, because then you can be more confident in putting forward a proposal, or, accepting a proposal or not accepting a proposal, because you know your legal advice. So that can also help. And it could be that sometimes the mediations do take place with the solicitors present. So then that can help in that moment, give that sort of reality testing.
So as part of your preparation, knowing what your legal stance is and or have your solicitor with you, and also being open so that there is some wiggle room in the outcome. If I'm wanting one thing and he's wanting something different, at least being open to an outcome that serves both parties. Is that what we're saying?
Yes, and also it's also about the children, because the children are going to benefit more from, both parents coming up with something, even if it's not their preference, but there's less conflict. The children are going to benefit more from that removal of conflict than having, parents really negotiating quite tough. And I'm not saying if you feel really strongly about a scenario, and especially when there are safety concerns, then maybe that means that mediation isn't for you, and a more sort of traditional or legal system, even just negotiating through 2 solicitors, because then they'll say, hey, buddy, this is, or this could happen or this could happen. So sometimes it's about not going to mediation as well.
Right. So then what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Are you saying that you want to get a lawyer first and then get mediation, or do you try for mediation before you get a lawyer?
Well, the first step is to try mediation, but part of the preparation could be to get legal advice. If you're going through a government-funded centre, then most family relationship centres all around Australia do have funding for legal advice, and they'll have, solicitors that go in once a week or once a fortnight, and you can just book in with them. And they could also offer generally a legally assisted mediation, if that was considered to, provide that additional support, or if you have your own private solicitor, then someone who deals with family as well, then that could help as part of the preparation. And then, if the mediator thinks actually we need to have solicitors present in the mediation, then they can organise that as well.
So once the mediation's said and done and everyone's got an outcome they're looking for, do you still need to get legal assistance to have that carried out, or is mediation just enough to say we've ticked the boxes and we can move on?
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, the agreement is not legally binding, but it could be made binding, and that would be a legal process outside of the mediation to get court orders drawn up. But for many parents, having an agreement in place that they've come to on their own terms can be enough. And then situations change. So it's quite common for there to be several mediations over, I guess, a decade or more, because children get older. There are decisions to be made, what school, what activities, potential relocation, whatever the case may be. There's so many considerations that could bring parents back into the mediation room.
Yes, I hear, I understand. Wow. So the book that you've written, who is that? Who is it designed for? Who should be reading this book?
Well, I really wrote it for, say, women who have achieved a sort of amount of success. And when I say success, I just mean they've done a lot. They've working or mothers, whatever the case may be, and have areas of their life where they feel strong in. But I guess that's what I mean as success. So they have some areas of their life where they've got a solid hold on, but then others where there might be repeat sort of situations that seem to just not go right, or they don't get a handle of it. And it could be relationships. You could have someone with a quite successful career, or doing a great job as a mum with beautiful children, and then relationships wise it's like, oh gosh, I just can't get it. Or it could be the other way around. It could be relationships good but career's not good, or could be a range of things. It's not that they're just kind of really easy and obvious examples, because I guess what I noticed is that there's inconsistencies in life, and I say trauma because, and I talk about trauma as not that obvious trauma. It just can be, you've grown up with a perfectionist parent or a critical parent, and that's left that sense of I'm not good enough. And it can be implied, it can be subconscious, and so there might be certain areas where I can't do it, I haven't done it. So and that's where the what's wrong and the what's strong categories really stand out, because there's parts, in certain people's lives that are strong, and then the other parts where it just focuses on what's wrong. And so that's who I really wrote it for. I mean, including myself, having areas where I've, have a solid, hold of, and then others not so much. So, and I guess that's the clue, that's the area to, I guess, be trauma informed with, and where maybe highlighting what's strong every now and then, or reflecting on how actually I really went straight to what's wrong in that situation. What have I learned from that?
So having that level of awareness. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I love it. So are there other books? I know that you're in pre-production, and the launch is in February 2024. Yes. That's exciting. So that's just really around the corner. So what are the plans for the book moving forward?
Yeah. So at the moment I'm running workshops based on the book, mainly with mental health practitioners, mediators, and even social workers. And in 2024, I'm going to bring that into high schools to help students really flip their anxiety and overthinking into self-reflection, growth, and resilience.
Excellent. Okay. So is overthinking is it a mental health issue? Is it a processing issue? Like, is it, or does it fit under another category? So like ADHD or OCD, like how does overthinking fit in? Can it be categorized? How do you know that you've got it?
Well, I think it kind of comes under all of the above because it's really about the impact on the individual's quality of life. What is that overthinking doing for me? What is that overthinking, doing for the person, down the street? That's really what it's about, because it might reflect or manifest in sort of OCD behavior, or it might reflect in someone who's maybe scared to take risks and doesn't move forward, or stays in past scenarios, past hurts and past wrongs. So it's really about the impact on the individual. But overall, I guess it has an impact on the sense of self. And when I talk about an individual sense of self, I guess what I really mean is, how much do you believe in yourself? So when our sense of self is weakened, then it's harder for us to believe in ourselves. Whereas when it's supported and built on and stronger, it's easier for us to believe in ourselves. And when we believe in ourselves, we are more resilient and we can handle adversity in a much smoother way and learn from, I guess, what we would call mistakes or situations, rather than beat ourselves up and overthink about it and sit in regret and that sort of narrative. Oh, I can't believe I did that again.
Yes. Oh, so if someone wasn't an overthinker or wasn't sure they were an overthinker, how would we explain overthinking so they would understand whether or not that might be their challenge?
Okay, well, I guess I propose that overthinking is when we have a lens that really focuses on what's wrong in a situation. And that to flip that to self-reflection and growth, it's about having the lens that focuses on what's strong. And it's not about being in the what's strong lens the whole time, but just that awareness of, oh, okay, because I guess what the goal is that the time between going from what's wrong to what's strong gets quicker and quicker, it's shorter and shorter, and there's that increased awareness.
The hindsight window, absolutely. I love it. So I suppose, could that mean that everybody has a challenge with overthinking at some point on some areas of their life, if not all of them?
Well, that's something I'd have to think about. But I mean, when I do say, I mean, and the subtitle is A Chronic Overthinker's Guide to Self-Reflection. And, when I do share, that name, a lot of people do turn around and say, oh, that's for me. So I think a lot of people can relate to it.
Yeah, so I'm a recovered hoarder, 33 cubic meters of stuff. And what I do know about being a hoarder at this end of it, out the other side, is that every single item, every tiny piece of that 33 cubic meters was a point of indecision. So that's a point of overthinking. So some of us can be really great at making decisions on some aspects of our lives, but not necessarily all aspects of our lives. And as you indicated early in the conversation, some people seem to have some parts sorted, but some parts still not. And so what's still holding them in that overthinking space as well? It sounds like a fabulous book. I'm really looking forward to diving in deep and having a read of it. And I'm excited that February is only just around the corner. And
yes, thank you.
That book launch. It's fantastic. So do you know at this stage where it will be available, or should we just go to the website?
Yeah, probably the easiest place is to go to website and social media, but it will be available online through various booksellers.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. And so you mentioned that you're going to be working in schools to teach them in and around this. It's not me, it's not you, it's me. And everything in and around the overthinking. So they'll be in the form of workshops. And will that be high school students or will that be primary school students?
Well, I've got one program already set up for high school students, their teachers and their parents. But I've been approached by another school to do high school and primary school, and that will be with a focus more on respectful relationships. So
that's fantastic. And that's is that dialing back to in and around mediation?
Well, yes, because it's kind of based on my work with families and domestic violence, and really kind of stripping it back and going to education level to raise awareness on the quality of relationships and the quality of our interactions.
Yes, so true. I love it. Well, thank you so much. It's been great having these beautiful conversations and diving in deep to the book. We're looking forward to reading it very soon, not very long, just around the corner. And
yes, thank you.
Curious to follow you and see where your program is going, what's happening in that area. And thank you for coming to Healing Through Love today to share what you know in and around this, because mediation is important and overthinking is one of our challenges, because I know as a survivor myself, I spent so many hours overthinking, every tiny aspect. Did I do this? Is this just every aspect? If I didn't do this, then this wouldn't have happened. And we just make it our own problem, and we create ourselves as the victims. And then it just keeps happening. So we create our own reality in and around that, and we attract more of it as well. So thank you so much. And in closing today, have you got words of wisdom to share with our audience?
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking about the title of the podcast is Healing Through Love. And so I would say to maybe think about what healing through love means for you, and think, okay, if I was to tell a friend who was going through some challenges what I thought healing through love meant, what would that mean? Just to think about that and maybe hold that idea for your own journey.
I love it. That's fantastic. In closing today, if you feel resonating with the Healing Through Love process and would like to know more about these local Pamper Days that are now global and probably in a place close to you, we would love to have a conversation with you, what that looks like. Reach out to Healing Through Love on any of the platforms. We'd love to have a conversation in around sponsorship or you attending, and also even being a practitioner and paying it forward for our survivors of family and domestic violence. From us here at Healing Through Love, and from Rosemary, that's a goodbye. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.